And it just really kind of struck me as like how brave of a person you have to be to go and fight for people who are actively touting the extermination of your race and fight that they have a right to do that. To me, it just really made me proud of some of the success that we've had as a country.
Yeah, because it really protects the minority in this argument of free speech. Where does hate speech come into the free speech? I mean, this was a great example. People today would say, oh, that's hate speech. So do you allow hate speech? Is that covered under freedom of speech?
This is Rhodium Radio, a place where we explore ideas and challenge your worldview. For more episodes, go to rhodiumradio.com.
America is a theocracy. God is money.
Most information these days is being weaponized.
I think Chris used to deny climate change. He acknowledges it, but he's not sure it's man-made. Is that accurate?
We like to act like science is this perfect thing, but science has been wrong a lot.
The wealth gap is not sustainable. You're going to end up with a revolution on your hands.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we are going to talk about free speech. This is a hot topic right now because it seems like free speech is anything but free, and more rare it seems. My question going into this whole debate, or should I say discussion, was, is hate speech allowed in a society who cherishes freedom of speech? Does the First Amendment protect me if I disagree with you and want to talk about how much I don't like you or your cause or your product in public? And why does it seem like more and more a liberal elite control our social media platforms and they can determine what I can and cannot say? And that drives me crazy. Do they have the right to do that on their privately owned platforms? I think you're going to dig the discussion. But first, I want to thank our sponsor for this episode, Sway Hammocks. You ever tried to go hammock camping and suffered from CBS? What's CBS, you ask? Cold butt syndrome. If you're tired of the rat race, scrolling through people's Instagrams, seeing them live their best life, it's time for you to live your best life. Get a Sway hammock. You see, each Sway product is fully insulated. It encases you with 800 filled down to keep you warm and cured from cold butt syndrome. So with Sway hammocks, you get it all, the insulated hammocks, straps, and rainfly, and not only that, it saves you weight. You ever added up the weight it takes to carry a sleeping bag, a pad, and a tent? See, with Sway, you have all that in less than 3.5 pounds of pure awesomeness. So get your Sway hammock today at swayhammocks.com. Use code Rhodium for 20% off your hammock. Okay, let's dig in.
So free speech been in the news, obviously, a lot lately with a president like Donald Trump. I think you're going to keep hearing it. And, there's, cases that catch your attention. So there's a guy lives in Illinois, Frank Collin, runs a group called the Nationalist Socialist Party of America. Easy way to say it would be it's a Nazi group. They dress up and put the swastikas on and the whole deal. So he had for quite a while been holding rallies in downtown Chicago at the public park. I think it was Marquette Park where they like to hold their rallies. And obviously it got a lot of attention. They would go out, they'd pass out pamphlets, they're wearing their swastikas. And Illinois, like most big cities, has a pretty big Jewish population. And so it didn't take too long. People started to, raise some concerns that, hey, here's a guy, he's, kind of white supremacy, socialist, that whole thing. And so essentially the Chicago municipality didn't know how to deal with it. So what they decided they'd do is require a $350,000 safety bond. So they tell Mr. Collins, hey, if you want to keep holding your rallies, it's getting to be dangerous. You have to put up a $350,000 safety bond. Frank Collins doesn't have a lot of money, so he's like, that doesn't work, and kind of felt like he was, getting pushed out. So him and his buddies, his swastika buddies get together, and they decide, you know what? There's a little town not too far from here in Chicago called Skokie, and Skokie had a very large number of Holocaust survivors, and so they decided to go have a big old Nazi rally here. Of course, that made the people of Skokie, Illinois, very nervous. So they followed Chicago's lead, and they passed a couple of quick ordinances at their next town hall saying no one could wear military uniforms in Skokie, Illinois. And these guys like to wear Nazi uniforms. And they said nobody could pass out materials that have any hate speech in them. So, that's Frank Collins' whole thing, is passing out pamphlets. And oh, surprise, surprise, you also have to have a $350,000 insurance bond. So, it's a way I realize, so often these free speech cases, towns, municipalities, cities, they really fight against free speech in a way that's not direct. It's kind of these indirect things. So the crazy thing about this is when as I first started read this story, it's like, wait, is this today? And the truth is that was in like 1977. And I just was blown away because it sounds exactly like what's happening today.
Exactly.
Even using the word hate speech. So you got to remember, this is, post-World War II, Holocaust survivors. Everybody's, still a little bit like, hey, this could happen again. It went before the Supreme Court. And it really is a landmark decision that a lot of our court cases today, we end up referencing Skokie versus the state of Illinois or Skokie versus the NSPA or Frank Collins. And what was really interesting with this story, and I think it's an important thing, and then we're going to get into the debate of free speech, is that the ACLU really struggled with whether they should take the case.
And they don't usually, right?
Well, it's interesting. When you look at the history of the ACLU, this is one where, they pretty much take freedom of speech cases, even though a lot of time it puts them in direct opposition to a large part of their group. And not just supporters of the ACLU, internally, a lot of the lawyers inside of the ACLU are Jewish. And they ended up, the main lawyers on this case that ended up fighting and wanted the case were a couple of Jewish lawyers. And there's one of the gentlemen just, he was being interviewed, recently about it. And it just really kind of struck me as like how brave of a person you have to be to go and fight for people who are actively touting the extermination of your race and fight that they have a right to do that. So to me, it just really made me proud of some of the success that we've had as a country. Now, I'm sure today we're going to get into some of the failures as a country with free speech, but I thought that was a pretty good one. So, the other interesting thing I found, and then I'll let you guys get in so nobody has to listen to me the whole time, but, we went quite a while. The first case that went before the Supreme Court was only 100 years ago of free speech. So we went a very long time. In fact, we went right up until the First World War. We didn't have a case of freedom of speech go to the Supreme Court until after or during World War I, which I thought, well, that's pretty telling right there. The minute there's a war, all of a sudden, wait, we need to curtail this free speech.
So I thought it might be good, though, in case anybody doesn't know like where we get the idea of free speech, it comes from the First Amendment. So I thought I'd read it. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The thing I found most interesting in what you said was they're fighting for something, or I guess on behalf of people they completely disagree with.
Yeah, I mean, not even completely disagree with, like, the people they're fighting for to have this right, once they have that right, or when they have that right, they want to exterminate you from the planet. I mean, that's the stated goal of Nazis is exterminate Jews. If you're a Nazi, that's pretty much a big part of what you do. And it's like, how much do you have to believe in some of our founding fundamentals to let yourself do that? I was really kind of awestruck, really.
Yeah, because it really protects the minority.
Yeah.
In this argument of free speech. But I guess an argument in this is also hate speech, right? Where does hate speech come into the free speech? I mean, this was a great example. People today would say, oh, that's hate speech.
Yeah.
So do you allow hate speech? Is that covered under freedom of speech? What do you think, Tim? Like, what's the line in the sand? Oh, you've crossed it. Now you're not allowed to say that.
See, I would say it's when your words inspire actions that negatively affect others.
So you think, like in that case of Skokie versus Illinois, they shouldn't have the right? Like they're handing out pamphlets talking about the white race is superior. You're saying, no, we need to stop that from happening.
Well, it depends. Are we having issues with people carrying out things against Jews or other minority groups in line with this speech.
So you're taking the approach. This is like, if you go look at the history of free speech cases or, public opinion, that it's a moving target. That during times of war, the government should reduce the amount of free speech they give us in line with, I read a lot that basically says in times where a group is being persecuted, say like Jewish people by Nazis, we should curtail those free speech. I probably disagree. I probably am at the other end, and I've not always been that way. Just a few years ago, I was definitely like, oh, it's a wartime, man. We got to limit the free speech. But even like I think it was during World War I, I'll find the fact later, but there was a real prominent case where, actually, I think it was the first one. I think it was this one from 100 years ago. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the first case, it was the first case that ever went to the Supreme Court was during World War I. There was a gentleman who was against the draft.
Okay.
And so basically he made a two-sided pamphlet and he started handing them out that purported that the draft and the war that we were fighting was nothing more than Wall Street getting the working class to go fight and die so that it can continue to make profits. And they during the war, they said, you cannot do this. This is going to hinder our chances, all this. And they made some laws like the Sedition Act and one about spying. But that case went to the Supreme Court, and one of the justices that was in the majority that ruled that, okay, that is okay to limit his free speech, just a few years afterwards, in another case, wrote the dissenting opinion in the minority and basically said I was totally wrong.
Really?
I was caught up during the war. In fact, it's the reason, his decision in that case is what led to the phrase we use a lot today, which is gives the government the right to curtail free speech when, the saying, well, you're not allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater.
That's right. That
was written in his majority decision in the first case. But later he was like, I don't know that I think the government should have the ability.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily just, like you said, in wartime. To me, it's not an issue of wartime. It's an issue of what is your speech causing? What is the result of your speech? So just because you disagree with somebody or one of their motives, like the government wants to go to war, you disagree with that. I'm not saying I don't believe that they should have the right to shut you up. That's your opinion. You're not. Who are you causing harm to?
Yeah, usually the argument is, I think you mentioned it, unless it gets to the point of inciting violence, you can really say whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, in that first case, what the concern was, there was a lot of German Americans. So if you're out there this was the argument, openly against the war, you're likely to win those people over to your side, and they are very likely to become spies. They are very likely to work openly because remember.
Okay, but you're saying very likely. Okay, that's hypothetical.
Well, again, so your case is once it starts happening,
you have to have a real issue, in my opinion.
I don't know, free speech, so it's tough.
So, all right, let me ask you this. It's interesting, the war stuff that people don't like when you talk bad about war. There's obviously business in war. Let's look at the case of it was a Christian couple that denied, I think, a gay couple from buying a cake or making their wedding cake. Remember that? Mm-hmm. So basically, these people came into the shop. They were having, I guess, a gay wedding. We want you to make a cake for us. These people said, this is against our Christian values to make a cake for a gay couple. Now, I think that's an interesting discussion, where someone's values go and how far they let them go. But we won't talk about that now. The question is, should persons have the right in this country to refuse service in their business? By the way, this just got really dropped in the Supreme Court 2 days ago.
Yeah. I know, I saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, I side totally on yes. So the unique thing that I come across with free speech, which I kind of like to draw a distinction, which is private versus public.
Okay.
So, to me, there's going to be a lot more protections and guidelines and safety nets, if you will, in public and government domains. But if you own a private business, I tend to side on the side of total free speech. So
that's not really speech. That's more, are you serving somebody, a customer? It's business, not speech.
But this case is going as a freedom of speech case.
They class like you're not allowed. I think it's under the First Amendment.
Yeah,
you're prohibiting the free exercise thereof. I think that's the argument that by forcing them to do business in something they're against, you're prohibiting us from practicing our beliefs as we want to practice them, which is refusing to endorse something they believe is not according to their belief system. See, I kind of side on business. Like, if somebody walks in and like, get out, well, that's your business. Like, go, walk out of that restaurant and go tell people there are jerks in there, don't eat there, and go to the next place.
Yeah, and the religious thing, like there was another real famous case that happened where there was a public school in San Diego, and there was a gay, lesbian, transgender group that organized. They called it a Day of Silence, and they still have them today. So it's a public school. This group organized. They got approval from the school to have this Day of Silence, and there was a Christian student that went to the school that was like, "Wait, this goes totally against my values." So he took a T-shirt out and wrote on the front, "Be ashamed. I will not accept what God has condemned." And on the back, he wrote, homosexuality is shameful, Romans 12:7. And when he went to school, a teacher right away was like, either you take the tape, he had tape on the front of the shirt, he's like, either you take the tape off or you're going to get suspended for the day. And they ended up suspending him. And so that case went to the Supreme Court as well.
Wait, I want to go back to what you guys were talking about, the bakers. And,
okay.
And you guys saying that you believe that private businesses should have the right to deny people.
Yes, I do.
So basically what you're saying is we should go back to the Jim Crow era and not allow black people in certain businesses.
So I always say one of the, like kind of to your point, I think there is this challenging thing of at certain times in the past, our government has definitely, I think, made things that went against its founding principles that actually ended up to be good. And I do think that there's a real dangerous line when the public domain starts telling the private domain what to do. No, I don't think you should be able to discriminate, but I also don't think your race is something that you're doing.
But you kind of did say you should be able to discriminate, meaning in the case of the bakers,
no,
they should
I'm
be
saying
able to discriminate
against your, meaning when those people come in there, and I have no problem, I would build a house for a gay couple. I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Make sure that's clear. But it is something different when you're saying, when it's something you're doing, like you can't, like if a guy had gone in there, a gay person, and had a cake made that said, "Happy birthday" to myself, I don't think they would have refused service. And I would say they probably shouldn't be allowed. Like, you shouldn't be able to refuse service. But they were asking them to make a wedding cake, and they actually believe that's against their religious beliefs. Like, I think you should have the right to say no. It's an act. You're not just discriminating a person. You're saying, I don't agree with the act of what's happening.
Yeah, but see the fine line. What if your religion is our race is the only ones who should be in paradise with the 70 virgins or whatever extreme you want to make? I see today. Let's just say today, because you're right. You're making a totally good point. It is the same argument. I feel like today if somebody said, "We do not serve black people in our restaurant," nobody would go there. I mean, sure, okay, in this day and age, there's white supremacists that would go there. But my point being, at least it seems like in this day and age, there's enough sensibility of people like boycott that business.
Well, I'm always a big proponent, like you said, of these days, the good news is we have freedom of press and freedom of speech, which should allow all of us to point and not have the government get involved. But there's a case right now that's going to go to the Supreme Court, I think this week, with a bakery, again, these bakeries, poor bakeries, and it's a university. Did you see this?
In Oregon?
Yeah,
I think it got dropped too.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, basically what happened was there was 2 African-American students in the bakery. The owner said, "Hey, they're shoplifting wine." And there was a little bit of a physical altercation. And really quickly, the student body found out about it and said, "Hey, this bakery racially profiled these 2 students, and this has been ongoing forever." And so they boycotted it. And the college really quickly dropped its contract with the bakery. And in the end, the 2 students actually ended up pleading guilty to a misdemeanor, and they came out and made a statement that it was not racial profiling. So actually, you're right, Jared. They just won, I think $30 million.
I think so.
The bakery, because they said, you don't have a right to take away a contract. But I'm like, yeah, they do. But the difference is, though, it's a government institution,
and they're receiving government money.
That's right. Yeah,
That's the difference.
That's the difference. Yeah. Yeah, the government thing throws a real kink in it. Like I know that you guys probably saw too. There's a lot of them going on right now have to do with government employees in a private setting, Facebook, saying things that are considered hate speech. So there's a jailer here in Georgia that just got fired. He resigned, but he said basically they called me and said we're going to fire you or you resign. Who they connected him to Norse, I guess like Norse, like Norse, right wing. What many would call a white supremacist group, that he's a leader of it. So they fired him. There was a Gwinnett, which is a county here in Georgia, councilman, that city commissioner or council member that wrote on his Facebook page that, what's the civil rights guy here in Georgia?
John Lewis.
John Lewis, he called him a racist pig, and he lost his job. And so he just won a lawsuit. What's interesting about that?
I thought he's suing right now. He didn't win
or
yet.
maybe he's suing. Okay.
Yeah, he's suing for $5 million.
What's interesting about that one is they went on his what's his name, the congressman,
John Lewis.
John Lewis. They went on his Facebook page, and he's called Donald Trump a racist. So it's like, this is where again, what is a government employee allowed to do? I think Tim, your argument would be, well, right now in the state of affairs with blacks in America, that you have to be careful about the freedom of speech to say certain things? Meaning, do you think there's a difference by him calling him like if John Lewis, he didn't, but had he said Trump's a racist pig, and this Gwinnett councilman called John Lewis a racist pig, is there a difference?
Is there a difference? Well,
I mean, of course, I know there's a difference. My point is, legally, should there be a difference? You made the case that if there's violence against a group, I think I read this week, have you guys ever heard this? The government says their rules right now is that if you can have people's lives in your hands.
I was going to say, if you're in a position where your views are going to impact your work.
Yeah. So like
it's the issue.
The example would be a police officer can't have a private Facebook page where he's spewing anti-black sentiment. Whereas if you're a building department official, you probably can.
Yeah, like for example, right now in Philadelphia, 72 police officers were put on desk duty because they found that they were posting racist things to their social media. Yeah, shocking. Not really.
Wow.
In Philadelphia?
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you can go to every city and that would be the case, really. Yeah. But yeah, so they're saying, well, you are a police officer. Your job on a daily basis, the way you view society impacts the way you carry out your duties. So we can't have racist people running around. You have a larger impact as a police officer than, say, I don't know, a baker.
Right. Let me ask you, let's talk about Kaepernick.
But wait, you guys still didn't answer the question, really, I feel like. Well, Chris didn't really.
All right, what did I
did
answer?
Too. I said if you're discriminating somebody's actions as a business, a private business, I think you should have that ability.
So you do believe that they should be allowed to say no black people allowed?
No, your actions. Being black is not an action.
Are you saying it has to be?
I'm saying like I said, if a gay person came in and said I'd like a birthday cake, and they went, "You're gay, get out of here," that's a problem. But if a gay couple comes in and says, "Hey, we'd like a wedding cake made," and that meaning you're basically saying, "Well, I'm allowing you, I'm helping you get married," and you don't agree with that. Like, I think you should have the ability to discriminate. I mean, every business has to have some ability to discriminate. I mean, like that's the part of being in private business is having a freedom to say these are the people I want to do business with.
Yeah, and I think my answer, I think it's completely wrong and evil to discriminate based on, whatever criteria we're talking about. At the same time, I kind of think that's where you bring in some of the argument of freedom. The problem comes, though, when you're in the majority, white people, and when you're in the minority, and I can't start a bakery across the street from you as an African American and tell all African Americans, "Hey, come on over here." So I can see where there's intervention needed. I totally get it, but it's that fine line of arguing something that you believe in, even though you don't agree with what people are doing. Like these Jewish lawyers arguing on the behalf of Nazis that they clearly disagree with. Okay, so let's go to the Kaepernick thing. This is where it was interesting to me hearing military people argue, I go and fight for the freedom of this man to do what he's doing. But then others too clearly lose their minds. Well, right?
And this is one of the ones that's just obvious. I mean, Donald Trump said that, I think he called him some pretty bad things. And I mean, the president of the United States campaigned they should lose their jobs.
That who should lose their jobs? Oh, the
People
NFL
that
players.
kneel.
Yeah.
He basically said to the owners,
Any athletes.
any athletes that don't respect our national anthem should be fired. It's a guaranteed right by the Constitution.
Right.
Trump is a crazy one right now. Like if you look like what's really going on in the world, the most popular cases, which is crazy, is this shift has occurred where the right is championing free speech. But almost every place they champion it is on college campuses where the left is drowning out the right. So there's plenty of examples of conservative people coming to speak at a university and left-wing people showing up and, blowing air horns or just not even letting them get to talk. So the right, in fact, it's Tim's favorite people, the Koch brothers, are funding tons. You love the Koch brothers.
What?
I know you love the Koch brothers. No, it's interesting. Like nobody knows. Like they're funding almost all of the right's opposition to free speech or opposition to prohibiting free speech. And Trump is a big proponent. And you can go look. He's tweeted and support these ones. But when it came to Kaepernick, he's as the president of the United States vehemently saying they should lose their jobs over it.
Well, yeah, because he's not principled.
Well, we know.
But argue rather than diss the president. What's the principle of the right and the left? Because they have both skin in this game right now.
They're both a disaster. I'd say both sides. They're so bad. They're none of them are principled. They want freedom of speech when it suits their values, and they want to silence other people when they say things differently,
which is un-American.
It's like, are you insane?
Yeah,
and that's what I see right now. Freedom of speech is the one thing that, like, more than any other, I look and be like, it's the most, like, nonpartisan thing. And what I mean by that is I could find you cases where both abuse it and then both prohibit it. It's like...
Well, and it's interesting. If you go down the street, you just ask people who are on both the left and the right of the aisle, what do you think of free speech? Oh, it's under threat. And they're coming at it from a totally different paradigm. It's like, should people have the right to protest like they did in Charlottesville? You'd have one side say, absolutely. Should women have the right to march against abortion bans in Alabama? Absolutely not, right? It's like, you have, wait a second, where's the consistency here? Should the bakers have the right to deny people baking a cake because you don't like that they're gay? And you're arguing, well, freedom of speech, First Amendment. But you're not letting someone stand up for kneel down for their principles. It's just
typically what I saw in all my research is that the right wants to prohibit free speech in times of war and in times of people being unpatriotic.
Or when it's against their religious.
Yep, religious. Yeah, I'll say religion and patriotism, which is war. And then the left wants to prohibit free speech when it's offensive to other people. They want nobody to be offended. And,
although they're offended the easiest, some would argue.
And then I go and say, well, that's why I say if we're going to, like clearly, like most debates, this is where we're going to draw the line, right? It's not, should we be allowed to say everything? Nobody thinks that. Should we not be able to say anything? Nobody thinks that. It's really about where we're going to draw the line. And I definitely feel like I want to err on the side of like drawing it towards the side of free speech. Daniel Webster, which I couldn't figure out if he was Webster Dictionary Daniel Webster or just a really famous old senator from back in the day, but he has a quote I really liked that said, "It's been said before that if all my rights were to be taken away, save one, I would choose to keep free speech because with that one right, I could soon gain back all the rights I had previously lost." And I think that's why it's so important to make sure that if we're erring, we err towards the side of freedom of speech.
Well, see, I'm a fan of free speech. Like I was not supportive of colleges rescinding invitations to racist individuals. Let them say they're racist.
They're
nonsense.
racist. Yeah, we don't like it.
Yeah, let them speak.
Sure.
However, I am not a supporter of businesses denying people services.
You're not supportive of them doing it or the right for them to do it?
The right for them to do it.
Yeah, well, I would... yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's where... Yeah,
I believe if you provide a service, you provide the service.
In any case, I mean, like, so I'm just thinking, like, I go back to my business. I'm a home builder, and I meet with a client. We sit down. We're talking about building a house, and I get the clue, like, and this person is going to be a pain to work with. I'm like, I just don't think we're a good fit. I'm not allowed to do that? In your world, I have to build a house for them.
No, that's a different thing. You're
Because I'm judging that it's going
Yeah.
to be but you're saying like, if I sat down like, oh, you're a devout Christian.
yeah,
I'm not Christian. I'm a Muslim.
right,
I can't build your house.
right.
Yeah, that's an interesting
don't
point.
know.
Check this out. This is where I think this gets very interesting. Follow the money, right? It says 16 of the world's biggest advertisers have joined together to push platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Google's YouTube to do more to tackle dangerous and fake content online. The Global Alliance for Responsible Media, that's what they've set up, will include media buying agencies from the major ad groups, and then they list them all, as well as the platform owners. The executive vice president of Unilever said it was the first time that all sides of the industry had come together to tackle a problem that had far-reaching consequences for society. And he says, when industry challenges spill into society, creating division and putting our children at risk, it's on all of us to act. Founding this alliance is a great step toward rebuilding trust in our industry and society. Then they list all these other names, Adidas and Procter & Gamble. So this is the thing. You know how some shows, once they say something offensive, it often happens, I think, on Fox News. The advertisers jump ship, and then you have, well, we got to cancel the show. Advertisers aren't paying. Like, kill the show. 16, I mean, these are huge companies. If they're like, Facebook, if you allow Chris LaFave to say he doesn't agree with Sharia law, even though, hey, maybe we don't agree with Sharia law, but if you don't allow him to say it, like, this thing of easily identifying hate speech instantly becomes whatever those who are in power deem hate speech.
But that's where, isn't it, we have a right of freedom of speech. We don't have right to a platform. I mean, in the old days, that would be like saying, hey, you have the right to freedom of speech. And then some of you are like, yeah, and you need to build me a stage and put a microphone out at the park. To me, that's what is going on a little bit with Facebook and that. It's like, I don't have a right to an audience. I have a right to free speech. You're trying to say that I have a right to an audience. I disagree. Now, where I do kind of vacillate a little bit is that the government has allowed Facebook to become a monopoly. So they, you know what I'm saying? Between Facebook and Google, I mean, they own YouTube, they own Facebook, they own Instagram. There's not many other digital platforms, but they are out there. 4chan, you can go on 4chan.
Yeah, well, and the argument, I guess,
There's
I'm
no
saying
advertisers.
is, I'm trying to say, like, Facebook, a big business, shouldn't refuse me right to do anything. Well,
Yeah,
they're a business.
They're a business, and that's what I'm saying is that you don't have a right to an audience.
But in this day and age, I would say most people think when they think free speech, well, what will the platforms I'm on speaking on allow me to do? Like any more free speech, if you go down to the public square, I mean, you're going to catch 50 people that may walk by you. Like, you're not really heard anymore in the grounds of free speech. We're all digital on platforms owned by companies.
What about here? You know, Tim, you probably remember in Atlanta here, they did the Black Lives Matter had a protest where they went out on the freeway and stopped it. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. You know, they've made laws against that. And it's like real big penalties. They basically say you're interrupting commerce.
Interesting.
And I'm like, I don't know. It's hard because there was another one where there was a case where this was recent. They had transgender or transvestites.
Probably transgender.
We're going to go read books at a library to kids. And, you know, people freaked out. So basically...
Like a public library?
Yeah, public library. There was a group there in support. And, of course, a lot of Christians showed up in opposition. And the police tried to make the Christians go across the street so there wouldn't be a confrontation. It's like, well, wait, that group gets to be at the library because why? Freedom of speech. It's a public library.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. I'm curious if the government owned more property back in the day so that they managed more. Like, what happens if private companies just take up most of the real estate in America? What's free speech anymore? It kind of disappears as people own stuff.
Well, they've already, you know, like as typical of the government, they nitpick their way out of it. Like, you can't just show up and protest. You got to go get a permit.
That's right. Or in the thing you cited in the beginning, $350,000 safety bond.
And they do that. They do that. I mean, like if I said I'm going to hold a rally in, you know, downtown Smyrna, I bet you the amount of licenses and permits. And so that's where I say, but I'll go back and say, you know, I don't know. Does our Constitution give you right to freedom of speech on public grounds?
I think that's probably what it is.
Does it say it? I mean, the definition you read doesn't really say that.
Peaceably protest. And I think it's only...
Do you see what I'm saying?
I guess you could do it on your own private property.
That's what I'm saying is, do we believe, forget what the government allows, do we believe that as a society we should definitely allow protest and freedom of speech on public property?
I think so.
I believe so.
Even in schools?
A private school?
No, a public school.
But that's government property.
Yeah. So you just said you definitely should allow protest and freedom of speech at a public school.
No, I said a private property.
Oh, you said private.
Yeah. On private property.
See? My question is, should we as a society mandate that, hey, if you're on public property, you can say or do whatever you want? Well, not whatever you want, but I mean, protest. You know what I'm saying?
See,
I want to go down to the park and walk around there with a sign that says, Black lives don't matter.
I mean, I think you should have the right to do that, even though I totally disagree with that sentiment. It's public property, and the amendment covers you on public property. Now, that doesn't mean another 1,000 people can't come and scream how wrong you are. That's allowed too.
And so, as a society, we're just going to pay for all that. Because, the police have to show up then. This is what happens is, like at the Republican National Convention just a couple years ago, they arrested like 2,000 people protesting. And I think like 1,600 of them got out with no offense. Like they didn't charge them with anything. But 2,000 people were arrested. That's a lot of manpower.
That's a lot of processing.
So if you're going to allow that, my point is you're going to have a lot of tax dollars set aside for maintaining the peace. Or you're going to have a lot of Charlottesville.
And I'm curious what happens when, let's just say Facebook, they're very powerful, or Apple, really any of these campuses out in Silicon Valley. If they just say, you know what, guys, we're going to have a death to white supremacist day. We think they should die because they're a threat to all the things we believe in, cherish, all the diversity, the whatever the things I feel like the majority, and this is where the mob rule thing comes in. It's like, who's going to protest that? Who's going to protect these Nazis when the majority?
Yeah, and what's interesting, and that's
even though I hate Nazis,
that's a little bit like that case I cited that's going on in the school where the school sanctioned a pro-gay lifestyle. And the Christian student was saying, but they'll never sanction a pro-God lifestyle.
Yeah, right.
And the school's argument would be, well, separation of church and state. But it's like, but that is his lifestyle. He believes in God. So my thing is, why is the school endorsing any days?
Yeah, what's
Just come to school and learn math.
Here's what's interesting about this. Yeah. Well,
how about endorsing math and science at school? That might be a good start.
That's a good start. See, America is so fascinating because it's really only been Christians versus no Christianity. Like, what happens with this debate when a Muslim majority comes into a town?
It's my favorite thing about religious people. It is. It's should we have Christianity or no Christianity? It's like, what if the debate was Buddhism?
Yeah. Islam. Let's just use Islam.
We know the answer.
Yeah, it's no.
No religion. You can't talk religion. They quickly want it out.
Even the Christians.
Yeah.
Get it out. See, and that's where, Tim, you got to be principled. Otherwise, it's just who has the most power and let's do what we want to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I also find it interesting when it comes to schools when they say, you can't talk about God in schools, right? But you learn about Greek mythology or that's
other religious things.
Yeah, that's a god.
Yeah. Speaking of Greek mythology, that was one of the early freedom of speech cases was in the Greek democracy, right? The first great experiment of democracy. Socrates was a teacher, and he started making his students ask these questions about the gods. It's like, hey, are you sure there's really gods? And the leaders, the senators are like, hey, you got to chill out with that. You're like ruining the youth. And that's what they eventually killed him over. Was basically freedom of speech. He said, if we're a true democracy, then you have to be okay with me asking the hard questions. And they said, no, we're not okay with it.
Interesting.
We're going to kill you.
Yeah, see, I've always been annoyed by the fact that in school, school should not teach you what to believe. It should teach you what's out there, the options that are available to you. So, in school they teach, what do you call it? Well, essentially the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. For the most part, yeah. Public schools, it's an evolution theory. Yeah.
Right.
And people argue, oh, that's not religious. No, it is religious. It's a belief in something you can't prove.
And my thing is, yes, you should put out there all the options that are on the table. It's up to the student to study and learn what they believe. So just because you're telling somebody that some people believe in creation doesn't mean you're ascribing to that belief system. We're telling them they should believe it. This is what some people believe. Study it. Learn about it.
Yeah, learn why they believe it.
Yeah, and essentially, like you said, they're trying to teach science like you would math. Like, we can agree there's some facts in math. You can teach 2 + 2 = 4. Science, there's some facts, but there's a lot of unknowns, like how we really started. There's some theories. Same thing, like, meaning science and history should be taught very similarly. With is like, hey, there's theories.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? There's ideas, there's concepts. Let's explore them all. And then you can, that's the goal of a teacher, is to make sure the student learns for themselves. So, like, I totally agree. There should be many theories. But like you said, it gets uncomfortable. Like, creationists are all for this, right? Yeah, there should be lots of theories. Yeah, creation should be taught. Okay, then in that conversation, you have to also say, well, this is how Muslims believe the world began. And this is what their book says. And
it's like, if they don't like that concept, I guess, in government education, well, that's where you have private. You can privately educate however you want them to. But yeah, but definitely you can see, even with the argument of no respecter of religion, there's a respect to hate on Christianity in a lot of these segments.
yeah.
Meaning you'd find more, well, let's teach them Buddhism, all these different religions, but there certainly seems to be this animosity towards, let me say, biblical Christianity rather than political Christianity. So I don't know. It's definitely a concern with what does the majority believe, and in this country right now, it's like, man, there's no telling. You just need some influential personalities, and everybody will believe something.
Well, yeah, and the crazy thing about Christians is, like, when you go to, like, most of the freedom of speech cases involving, like, Christianity and Christians, a lot of them have to do with homosexuality. Right?
Or let's take Kaepernick, it would be anti-patriotism.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot with homosexuality. And I'm like, look, Christians are pretty hung up on something that is, how many verses in the Bible deal with homosexuality? And how many deal with, Jesus saying, be loving and accepting? And
that's fair.
So, like, this student that went and protested the, gay lifestyle day, it's like, you think that was Jesus's approach? So it's like, is it really their religion or is it their culture? I think that we have a real thing going on in America with Christians as a culture. Their culture is patriotism. There is nothing in the Bible about being patriotic.
But to be fair, you said it very clearly. But their patriotism is trumping their religion. It's become their religion.
Because it's a culture.
Yeah.
Because Christians don't listen to rap music, they listen to country music. That's their culture.
But I would even wonder, Tim, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Is their religion almost being rewritten, let's just say evangelical Christianity in America, to fit their patriotism?
To fit everything about their lifestyle. Yeah, like they stand on no moral principles based on their book. They just, whatever they ascribe to at that point in time, that's what they preach or teach.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think that it's almost like some are starting to use the Bible in certain ways, and I'm sure this has happened through history, to prove political agendas.
Well, kind of like,
I think Israel is a big argument.
Mm-hmm.
The reason so many American Christians get into the Israel argument is because of a belief they have. Well, the Bible says this. I think we're going to get into it in another episode, but it's influencing their politics. Powerful religious preachers, John Hagee's one, they're using, hey, Christians, look at the Bible. We need to, and it's becoming like this patriotism. It's like, wait a second. Is that what we're supposed to do? It's definitely, to me, it just screams, this is the kingdom of heaven. Stop looking at anything in the life to come. Let's make this. And boy, I think that was the sin of the Jewish religion. Like, let's just make this everything we want it to be, to the downfall of other nations and trample them to get what we want. And you're kind of seeing, I just always have my eye on that in America of, look at the power of the religious right in politics. And if anybody hasn't paid attention to it, which some people have, I think more than ever, though, now people are, they're like, it is clearly a very powerful base. And some have argued shrinking, I'd argue growing. Anyway.
Based on
all these cases, based on all the fights taking place on college campuses, et cetera.
You're saying growing in influence, not growing in number.
Growing in influence, yes.
Or activity or activism
just
or
noise or
say,
loudness or yeah.
Well, I think what happened is, even though the group itself might be shrinking, they've gone and recruited other groups to align with them.
So a consolidation is taking place.
Yes. So, like, for example, the religious right went and is now aligned with the alt-right movement. Whereas before, I would say they weren't really, I mean, they were kind of aligned, but it wasn't like they weren't walking hand in hand. Whereas today, I would say pretty much you go down the list of beliefs or things that they politically support, and they're the same group.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, you look at Protestantism. Protestantism was all these groups protesting the next one. Oh, we've actually figured something out more than the Methodists. We've figured out something more than the Baptists. But now you see they all kind of realize, well, we're shrinking in our distinctions and they're merging like, hey, politically, we need to probably be on the same page. Let's just drop some of the unique differences we have. So you're losing some of that nature that they had of being distinct. And I think it's this, let's get in this together because, hey, the writing's on the wall.
And they like when they get a victory, they don't care how it's gotten. They just like that we've won. So right now, we're getting conservative judges who are going to ban abortion. We don't care at what cost. Even if they raped a woman, which is against our biblical principles, I don't care because they support what I believe in. Or same thing in Israel. Well, I support Israel as a nation, so it doesn't matter if Israel, things that they do in practice go against my religion.
Well, so that was like one of my questions about the gay cake thing. You know, I think pretty much across the board, if somebody was a Christian, they were on the side of the bakery. Like, yeah, you have a right to deny service, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if it goes against your religious beliefs. And what I found crazy about that is that you could agree that they have the right to do it, but why are you agreeing they should do it? You see, you mean to tell me all these Christians that are on that case 100% with the owners, don't they look around and say, you know, the WWJ, like, what would Jesus do? Like, you're telling me Jesus wouldn't bake a cake?
So it's interesting about that. You think about Jesus grows up for 30 years. He's a carpenter. And he's Jesus. And he has a very high standard of principle. He views a lot of things as sin. You with me?
Yeah.
And I have a hard time believing that the guy who he's building a table for is not perfect. The Bible's clear on this, right? So he's not saying, sir, I actually know that you do this sin and I can't make you a table.
That was my thing. So like, wouldn't that, like, that cake thing should have caused this massive debate in the Christian churches about whether they should bake a cake or not a massive defense of this couple, because that's exactly my point. It's just an obvious sin to them, not to me. To the bakery,
it's an external
they said
sin.
It's obvious, like, they're getting married and it's two guys, that's obvious. But if you really were committed that you're not supposed to provide a service to people that are sinning, then you would have to have a questionnaire. Have you lied or adultered this week? Have you respected your parents? Because you'd want to know that you're not serving any sinners. That was exactly my point.
Right.
And the likelihood of that is zero.
Yeah,
it's
that's
zero.
Right. That's
right. Jesus says in his Bible, everybody is sinned.
That's right.
And everybody is, worthy of getting redemption. So I don't understand this. That's why I call it the culture of Christianity.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because it didn't spark a debate in the church community about whether we should be serving gay people or not as Christians. That wasn't even a debate. It was like already decided. Hell no.
No. I think there's a distinction between what I call real Christian churches and the religious right, because I would agree in real churches, it's not even a debate because it's not a debate. You serve people.
Yeah. But where were those people during this case? And it's like, why aren't they coming out? And why don't we hear from them that say, look, we're Christians too, and we disagree with this. Yes, you have the right to do it, but you shouldn't do it.
Could be the culture thing.
I
think it is. I think they're afraid to speak against it.
I don't think they're afraid. They're not as loud. They're smaller. They are the minority
Shame
within
on
Christianity.
them.
No, because you're looking at them like,
stand up.
I would put myself in that group.
They may not have a voice like the others do. So
no, because then you're out. Like for example, like I'll put myself in that camp, and a lot of people have questioned me like, well, are you a Christian?
Because you're not anti-gay, and right now, if you're Christian, you need to be anti-gay. That's one of the rules.
I don't. Yeah, because I don't align with a lot of things. Like I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not anti-gay.
Are you a Christian?
I would like to think so.
No,
yes.
you know what I mean? I was responding to, wait, you just said two things. How can you call yourself a Christian?
Yeah, people have asked me, do you pray? I'm like, why would that? I don't even understand, but that's where we're at.
And so this is interesting on I think the state of the Christian church is you're not hearing a lot of people having the debate on like the nuances of it. And I think you kind of got to it. Hey, are you a Christian? Yes. Do you believe people should be homosexual? No. Do you believe they should be able to serve people a cake? Or just should, out of the kindness of their heart? Yes. You're not finding a lot of that. I can still believe in a principle that I hold as true, but I'm not going to force it upon you, and I'm going to show you love by giving you food, right? Mm-hmm. You're hearing people, I think in a lot of Christian churches, you know what? It's okay to be gay. And hey, anybody can believe what they want. But you're not seeing a lot of people hold a line of, we're going to hold to this belief, which we believe the Bible says, but we're going to love gay people. We're going to make them cakes. Like, you're just not hearing these
the debate I want to have with the
details.
Christian then, if you agree you shouldn't serve a gay person the wedding cake, then you align 100% on that view with radical Islam.
Explain.
Well, there's another religion that would also agree you shouldn't serve a gay person a cake. It's radical Islam.
Or shouldn't serve a Christian.
No. This is the thing. The religious right and radical Islam align on almost everything.
I know.
That's a bold statement.
They do. They're like opposite ends of the same stick. You know what I mean?
And that's why it's about freedom of speech.
Right?
Yeah, they everybody who's not in their group is of the devil essentially and deserves to die. They have no rights. They want to force their beliefs on everybody else. That's the thing. The religious right is so opposed to Sharia law, but they want to enforce all of their beliefs.
That's the one that gets me. Like, they go, this is a Christian nation. It was founded on Christian principles. But then when it comes to a Muslim issue, they want just, hey, the government's not supposed to be involved in religion. Right? Like if a Muslim wanted to pray in school, they'd say, well, you're not supposed to have religion in schools.
Yeah. So here, I had a question. I was reading the First Amendment. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Does that include the president and executive orders?
Well,
And it's really for the whole First Amendment.
well, first of all, Congress is the only one who makes laws.
So the president couldn't trump this?
Well, the president, in theory, is not supposed to be making laws.
Yeah, okay, I hear you.
Chris, your theory's out the window.
I mean, executive orders.
This is 2019. Get on board.
Totally out of the boat, but I think it's important to note that that's why it says that way. Congress is the only one who's supposed to be able to make a law, and there's a reason they're the only one supposed to be able to make a law. They are the largest representative body of us.
And it's diverse, and it's not one person. I've been thinking about something lately. The danger of having all the power in one person's hands. In any organization, church, government, like, all you need to sway that person, I mean, man, that's just not a safe place to be. So executive orders are kind of un-American.
No, they definitely are.
Yeah.
They're very un-American.
Yeah, it's like, that's real awkward. But the beautiful thing is that we can have this discussion in this country where other countries run by perhaps Sharia law officially, they aren't having these discussions. And I think that's the beautiful thing. Although I've seen lately comedians saying, it's kind of hard to be funny anymore. You can't really say anything. You're just you can say it. I heard somebody say a joke. They said, in your country, in our country, we have free speech. The only difference is in your country, you're still free after you speak. And that's hilarious.
Wait, so here's one for you. I don't know if you guys heard the story about the kid from Parkland, Kyle Kashuv, who he is pro guns. Is that the right way to?
Just to own them or whatever.
Yeah, he's like,
Okay.
Second Amendment supporter. We should have guns here, guns now, guns forever. I guess I don't know, but he was accepted into Harvard, and then they went and found that 2 years ago, on his Google chat or whatever it is, he had spewed a lot of racist hate speech. Like I think in one paragraph, he used the N-word like 12 times. So Harvard rescinded his acceptance letter.
Oh, yes. Wow.
How do you feel about that?
I feel horrible about that. Because I think we have an epidemic in America where we're going to act like you have to be perfect your whole life, that you can't change. You know, one of my favorite stories was this, you know, it was like a profiled little documentary about a white supremacist who reformed, and his best friend today is this black guy who helped reform him. That is the power and beauty of America. So, going back to the kid at Parkland, if he says, yeah, I was 13 and I was an idiot and I hung out with a bad crowd and that's not the way I feel today, and if you let me in your school, you're going to see that's the way. You can put me on probation, watch my social media, you'll see that's not how I conduct myself today. Well, yes, they should let him in. You shouldn't have to pay for a mistake you made in speech your entire life, especially in a country where you have freedom of speech.
So how do you decide if something has changed or not?
Well, again, I mean, to me, let's go back. Harvard's totally private, right?
Yeah.
They can accept whoever they want, in my opinion. You know, that's one of my opinions.
They don't take government money?
So you are you just conflicted.
No,
yourself.
well, because I mean, in general, I'm just saying if it was a government school, it'd be a totally different view. But Harvard's confusing to me because I always think of it as like but it's private. I mean, yeah, I mean, they have a lot of different reasons they accept people I don't agree with. Forget that one. But in general, again, legally, yes. But if I was on the board of Harvard, I would probably argue, hey, let's look at it and see. I mean, I have to know more than just at one point in his past, he did a racist rant online.
Well, I hear you. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think everything changes when you're taking government money. And Harvard, it says, in 2017, took $535 million in federal grants.
Which I don't even understand because their endowment is
insane.
Billions. So it's like, why are we giving them money?
Oh.
We need to talk about colleges. They're disastrous.
Okay, so back to this case. So he claims he has changed.
Yeah.
Now he is aligned with the conservative right wing, which tend to.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't. You can't be guilt. You can't be. And I'm not saying there's some signs there, but again, that's where you have to have people that they. My point is, they accepted him, right? Mm-hmm. That means he went through interview process. He went through these things. It's not like they found this from like last week. Mm-hmm. You can't say, well, a long time ago he said some racist comments, and currently he's a Republican, so he's probably still a racist.
See, I just feel like we need to be more redemptive. That's the argument.
I do too.
Hey, this guy was a felon. You can't give him a shot.
And forget redemptive.
Okay,
or forget redemptive. Maybe going to Harvard's going to help him be a better person. That would be my attitude. Like, you would hope he comes to your college that's a diverse enough place where you're open to opinions and you're open to have a different view. And you go, hey, maybe his views will change.
All right, so it was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So do your grades from 2 years ago affect you getting into Harvard?
Yes.
Does the public service you did 2 years ago affect you getting into Harvard?
Yes.
So why does what
so
you say?
If you did a lot of public service 2 years ago and your grades were fantastic, and when they interview you, go, oh, but I don't plan on studying at all at Harvard. I bet you my grades will go to crap. And I hate public service. It was a waste of time 2 years ago. Then they should take that into consideration as well.
I agree.
But that's what I'm saying is he's saying, yeah, I said that, yes.
Right. You said take into consideration. So you look at in college acceptance, you look at the whole body of somebody. You don't just look at, oh, you have great community service, or oh, you have great grades. You look at your grades for the past 4 years. You look at your community service for the past 4 years. You look at your statements. You look at all these different things. So part of them looking at him, they accepted him based upon who he was as a total person.
That's right.
And part of now they're saying,
let's say same story, good community service, good grades. Except he got caught robbing a convenience store and did 1 year of juvie.
When he was 12.
When he was 17, 2 years ago, whatever. Sure. It's like, yeah, they're kids. I did a lot of stupid crap way past 18 that I don't need people holding against me my whole life.
Right, but they do consider those things.
I know, and they shouldn't. They should look at the kid and say, oh, he got out of juvie. You're trying to apply what you always apply, which is those people they wronged, so let's wrong this.
No, that's the way they do it. That's the way they do admissions today. So
you're asking me. You asked me my opinion, and I'm saying if you believe that he truly is not that way today, if you say no, we interviewed him and he's still a raging racist, yeah, you probably shouldn't let him in your school. But if you say no, that's not who I am today, and you really believe that, of course, I think you should be forgiven and let it.
But is the argument it's a private institution and they can do whatever they want? But what happens when it's government funding?
Well, I'm with you. Once you take government money, but again, it's so screwed up because they don't take everybody. To me, once you take government money, you have to have an open door policy. Everybody paid the taxes. Why should you be able to say we're only going to take the smartest? Do only the smartest people pay taxes? No, I'm pretty sure everybody pays taxes. So to me, once you accept government money, you have to accept everybody. I would say that about any state school. There should be an open door policy. Yeah, you got it. Yo, you want to come to school? Great, come on.
Right, but so you said if they believe he's changed. So clearly, apparently they don't believe he's changed.
So you're asking if this is fair, what they've done to say, hey, you can't come here.
Yeah.
Oh, they did deny him? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Oh. Again, they can do whatever they want. In my opinion, it's a private institution. And I probably, the likelihood that he's changed is probably pretty slim. But I do think that as an institution, you do have to sometimes consider, like, these are still growing people. Like, your brain's not even formed until you're 25 fully. And I don't like this. The world we're in right now is like, people are running for like political office in their 40s and having to answer what they did when they were 18. And I'm like, you're going to really shrink the pool of eligible people if you're going to be held accountable for who you were at 18. And I even say it's one of my complaints is people don't change enough after 20. I'm agreeing not many people change, but we should institute a policy or a culture in America of like encouraging people, like, keep being better, keep being open-minded, keep thinking. And if at 18 your experience is I didn't go to college or I didn't get to go to the college of my choice, it's like, yeah, you're probably just going to get more staunch in your views.
Well, I actually agree with you somewhat in the fact that we should allow people the opportunity to redeem themselves. But I don't believe that the individual has changed. Like, I don't.
Yeah. We just know those people.
Yes,
it's unlikely.
It's unlikely.
But still, in the principle of it, you're saying.
But it's unlikely in the same, like I said, and that's where I go back and say, I try to be more understanding today. So if you said at 16, this guy jacks a car, if he had a little record, let's say, and he applied to, it's not Harvard, but it's,
University of Georgia.
University of Georgia at, Kennesaw, where that guy would apply, and he's got a little bit of a track record, it's likely he'll probably do something again. That's what the laws of nature tell us. It doesn't mean he's a horrible person. It means he's probably a product of his environment. And we need to keep making sure that we're trying to help that person get away from those actions. Well, the same thing applies to a racist 15-year-old. A racist 15-year-old is that because of his surroundings, because of the people he grew up with. I would say, boy, you probably want him to get into some type of liberal institution where his thoughts, ideas would be challenged. I'm not saying you have to, but don't you want him to? No, you want him to go to where? The University of Florida and, around a bunch of other guys who want guns all the time and also have 15 N-words on their Facebook page. I just say, no, that's probably a bad idea. So what I'm saying is we should embrace the idea that we as a group, as a society can help change. And
so what you're saying is he should go to Howard University.
Yeah.
There you go.
I heard they're debating whether Morris Brown can stay open. I saw it. Let's get some enrollment up there.
Any last words? No?
I don't.
I think we covered it. All right, cool. You've been listening to Rhodium Radio. As you can see, we're having a good time, and we hope you are too. For more episodes like this, go to rhodiumradio.com. We'll see you next time.